Today's an ordinary day. You've got some downtime, you're scrolling through your phone, maybe you're online shopping. You're looking for something vintage, a conversational piece. This is when you come across a wine cabinet that's supposedly haunted by a restless and vengeful spirit. Are you buying it? No, you're not buying it, because you never buy anything haunted. If you did, congratulations. You've just invited a Dybbuk into your house, and that's basically what happens in today's story. Hello everybody, welcome back to Creative Creeps. My name is Chaos Cass, and in today's episode, we're diving into one of the internet's most infamously haunted objects, the Dybbuk Box. I really hope I'm saying that right. Grab a snack, get cozy, and let's get creepy. So what is a Dybbuk? Because I had no clue before today's episode, okay? A Dybbuk in Jewish folklore is a disembodied human spirit that, because of its former sins, is forced to wander the world restlessly until it finds safe haven within a person's body. Belief in such spirits was especially prevalent in the 16th and 17th century, and it was also believed that people who were suffering from mental disorders or nervousness would go to a miracle worker rabbi who was alone the only person who could force the Dybbuk out. But the term Dybbuk Box didn't come around until more recently. In 2003, a curious eBay listing popped up that would literally change the internet forever. Kevin Manis listed a wine cabinet for sale with a long description. And I mean long, okay? I'm actually going to read this listing for you guys because it contains a lot of really important information, and it would be a shame to talk about the Dybbuk Box without talking about the listing that kind of caused it in the first place. So here we go into the listing. All of the events that I am about to set forth in this listing are accurate and may be verified by the winning bidder with the copies of hospital records and sworn affidavits that I am including as part of the sale of this cabinet. During September of 2001, I attended an estate sale in Portland, Oregon. The items liquidated at this sale were from the estate of a woman who had passed away at the age of 103. A granddaughter of the woman told me that her grandmother had been born in Poland, where she grew up, married, raised a family, and lived until she was sent to a Nazi concentration camp during World War II. She was the only member of her family who survived the camp. Her parents, brothers, a sister, husband, and 2 sons and a daughter were all killed. She survived the camp by escaping with some of the other prisoners and somehow making her way to Spain, where she lived until the end of the war. I was told that she acquired the small wine cabinet listed here in Spain, and it was one of only 3 items that she brought with her when she immigrated to the United States. The other 2 items were a steamer trunk and a sewing box. I purchased the wine cabinet, along with the sewing box and some other furniture at the estate sale. After the sale, I was approached by the woman's granddaughter who said, "I see you got the Dybbuk Box." She was referring to the wine cabinet. I asked her what a Dybbuk Box was, and she told me that when she was growing up, her grandmother always kept the wine cabinet in her sewing room. It was always shut and set in a place that was out of reach. The grandmother always called it the Dybbuk Box. When the girl asked her grandmother what was inside, her grandmother spit 3 times through her fingers and said, "A Dybbuk, a Kesslium." I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The grandmother went on to tell the girl that the wine cabinet was never, ever to be opened. The granddaughter told me that her grandmother had asked the box to be buried with her. However, as such a request was contrary to the rules of an Orthodox Jewish burial, the grandmother's request had not been honored. I asked the granddaughter what a Dybbuk and a Kessel were, but she didn't know. I asked if she would like to open it with me. She did not want it open, as her grandmother had been very emphatic and serious when she instructed her not to do so, and, regardless of the reason, she wanted to honor her grandmother's request. I finally ended up offering to let her keep it, what seemed to me to be a sentimental keepsake. At that point, she was very insistent and said, No, you bought it." I explained that I didn't want my money back and that it would make me feel better to do what I thought was an act of kindness. She then became somewhat upset. Looking back now, the way she became upset was just plain odd. She raised her voice to me and said, "You bought it, you made a deal." When I tried to speak, she yelled, "We don't want it." She began to cry, asked me to leave, and quickly walked away. I wrote the whole episode off to the stress and grief she must have been experiencing. I took my purchases and politely left. At the time when I bought the cabinet, I owned a small furniture refinishing business. I took the cabinet to my store and put it in my basement workshop where I intended to refinish it and give it as a gift to my mother. I didn't think anything more about it. I opened my shop for the day and went to run some errands, leaving the young woman who did sales for me in charge. After about a half hour, I got a call on my cell phone. The call was from my salesperson. She was absolutely hysterical and screaming that someone was in my workshop breaking glass and swearing. Furthermore, the intruder had locked the iron security gates and the emergency exit, and she couldn't get out. As I told her to call the police, my cell phone battery went dead. I hit speeds of 100 miles per hour getting back to the shop. When I arrived, I found the gates locked. I went inside and found my employee on the floor in the corner of my office, sobbing hysterically. I ran to the basement and went downstairs. At the bottom of the stairs, I was hit by an overpowering, unmistakable odor of cat urine. There had never been any animals kept or found in my shop. The lights didn't work. As I investigated, I found that the reason the lights didn't work also explained the sounds of glass breaking. All the light bulbs in the basement were broken. All 9 incandescent bulbs had been broken in their sockets, and 10 4-foot fluorescent tubes were lying shattered on the floor. I did not find an intruder. However, I should also add that there was only one entrance to the basement. It would have been impossible for anyone to leave without meeting me head on. I went back up to speak with my salesperson, but she had already left. She never returned to work, after having been with me for 2 years, and she refuses to discuss the incident to this day. I never thought of relating the events of that day to anything having to do with the cabinet. Then, things got worse. As I already indicated, I had decided to give the cabinet to my mother as a birthday gift. About 2 weeks later, after I made the purchase, I decided to get started on refinishing it. I was surprised to find that the cabinet had a unique little mechanism. When you opened one of the doors, the mechanism causes the opposite door and the little drawer below to open at the same time. It is very well made. Inside the cabinet, I found the following items: one 1928 U.S. wheat penny, and another 1925 U.S. wheat penny, one small lock of blonde hair bound with a string, one small lock of black or brown hair bound with a string, one small granite statue engraved and gilded with Hebrew letters. I have since been told that the letters spell out the word shalom, one dried rosebud, one golden wine cup, and one very strange black cast iron candlestick holder with octopus legs. I saved all the items in a box, intending to return them to the estate. The family has refused the items, so they'll be included in the sale of the cabinet. After opening the cabinet, I decided not to refinish it. I cleaned it and rubbed it in some lemon oil. It was at this time that I noticed that there was an inscription in Hebrew carved into the back of the cabinet. I have no idea what it says or if it's significant. I have included a picture of that inscription below. Pause. So, since this listing, the carving in the back of the wine cabinet has actually been identified, and it's known as the Shama. The Shama is actually a very important prayer in Judaism, and... Judaism? Yeah, Judaism. The Shama is actually a very important prayer in Judaism, and it basically represents the complete oneness with self and God. You know, loving God with all of one's soul, heart, and strength. And if you didn't know, earlier I mentioned shalom, and shalom is basically a word that means peace, but it's a bit more than that. It kind of means the complete absence of conflict. Earlier I also mentioned the word shalom, and I didn't really give a description for that, so I'll do that now. Shalom means peace, but it's also a bit more than that. It's kind of more the complete absence of conflict. It can also mean wholeness and completeness as well. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's get back to this listing. And I mean long, okay? I have no idea what it says or if it's significant. I have included a picture of that inscription below. On my mother's birthday, October 28th, 2001, my mother called to tell me that she was going out of town with my sister for 3 days, and we postponed celebrating her birthday together until she returned. On October 31st, 2001, Halloween, my mother came to my shop. We were going to have lunch together, but before we were going to leave, I gave her the wine cabinet. She seemed to like it. While she examined it, I went to go make a phone call. I hadn't been out of sight for more than 5 minutes when one of my employees came running into my office saying that something was wrong with my mom. When I went back to see what the matter was, I found my mom sitting in a chair beside the cabinet. Her face had no expression, but tears were streaming down her cheeks. No matter how I tried to get her to respond, she would not. She could not. It turns out that my mother had suffered a stroke. She was taken to the hospital by ambulance, and she ended up suffering partial paralysis and losing her ability to speak and form words. She has since regained the ability to speak. She could understand things being said to her and could respond by pointing to letters of the alphabet to spell out words she wanted to say. When I asked her the following day how she was doing, she teared up and spelled out the words Nogift. no gift. I assured her that I had given her a gift for her birthday, thinking that she didn't remember, but she became even more upset and spelled out the words HATEGIFT, hate gift. I laughed and told her not to worry. I told her I was sorry she didn't like the cabinet, and that I would get her anything she wanted if she promised to get well soon. Still, I didn't associate anything that had happened with the cabinet itself or anything paranormal. Frankly, I don't think I even used the term paranormal until this last month. I'll try to make this short now. And I mean long, okay? I gave the cabinet to my sister. She kept it for a week, then gave it back. She complained that she couldn't get the doors to stay closed and that they kept coming open. There are no springs in the door mechanism, and I have never found that the doors come open. I gave it to my brother and his wife, who kept it for 3 days and then gave it back. My brother said it smelled like jasmine flowers, while his wife insisted that it put out an odor of cat urine. Then I gave it to my girlfriend, who asked me to sell it for her after only 2 days. I sold it the same day to a nice middle-aged couple. 3 days later, when I came back to open the shop for the day, I found the cabinet sitting at the front doors with a note that read, "This has a bad darkness." I had no idea what that meant. Anyway, I ended up taking it home. Then, things got even worse. Since the day I brought it home, I began having strange reoccurring nightmares. Every time I have the horrible dream, it goes something like this. Since the day I brought it home, I began having a strange reoccurring nightmare. Every time I have the horrible dream, it usually goes something like this. I find myself walking with a friend, usually someone I know well and trust at some point in the dream. I find myself looking into the eyes of the person that I'm with. It is then that I realize that there's something different, something evil looking back at me. At that point in my dream, the person I am with changes into what can only be described as the most gruesome, demonic-looking hag that I have ever seen. This hag proceeds then to beat the living tar out of me. I have awakened numerous times to find bruises and marks on myself where I had been hit by the old woman during the previous night. Still, I never related the nightmares to the cabinet, nor do I think that I ever would have. About a month ago, however, my sister and my brother and his wife came over to my house and spent the night. The following morning, during breakfast, my sister complained that she had a horrible nightmare. She said that she recalled having had it a couple times before and went on to describe my nightmare exactly to the last detail. My brother and his wife froze as they listened, and then chimed in that they had both had the exact same dreams during the night as well. The hair was standing up on the back of my neck, and still is. As we talked, it became clear that the common denominator was that each of us had had the nightmare during the times that the cabinet was in our respective homes. I called my girlfriend and asked if she could recall having any nightmares recently. She described the same nightmare, same hag, everything. When I asked her if she remembered the date that she had the nightmare, she said that she couldn't. Then I asked if it happened to be the night before she gave me the cabinet back to sell for her, and she said, "Yeah, hey, how did you know that?" Now then, since my family discussion, it seems like all hell is breaking loose. For a week afterwards, I started seeing what I can only describe as shadow things in my peripheral vision. In fact, numerous visitors to my house have claimed that they have seen these shadow things. I put the cabinet in an outside storage unit and was awakened when the smoke alarm in the unit went off in the middle of the night. When I went to see what was burning, I opened the door and didn't see any smoke. However, I did get hit with the intense smell of cat urine. When I went back inside, the smell was there in my house. I do not own a cat, and I never have. I went back outside and grabbed the cabinet. I brought it back inside and tried to research it on the internet. I fell asleep and once again had the same freaking nightmare. I woke up at around 4:30 a.m. when it felt and smelled like someone was breathing on my neck, to find that my house now smelled like jasmine flowers, and just in time to see a huge shadow thing go lopping down the hall away from me. That's scary. I would destroy this thing in a second, except I really don't have any understanding of what I may or may not be dealing with. I am afraid, and I do mean afraid, that if I destroy the cabinet, whatever it is that seems to have come with the cabinet may just stay here with me. I've been told that there are people who shop on eBay that understand these kind of things and specifically look for these kind of items. If you're one of those people, please buy this cabinet and do whatever you do with the damn thing. If you are one of these people, please buy this cabinet and do whatever you do with a thing like this. Help me. You can see that I have no reserve price or minimum bid. If I can make things any easier, let me know and I will do everything within my abilities. On the same day that my mom had her stroke, the lease to my store was summarily terminated without a cause. Kevin then goes on to update the listing a couple more times, and it's usually just related to the price point or people trying to scam him outside of eBay, but there is one important update. He says, "For those of you wanting to know if I'm still experiencing anything out of the ordinary, I thought everything was going okay until I got home on Friday, the 13th of June, and found that my fish in my freshwater aquarium, all 10, were dead. I'm still hoping that this is all coincidental." Later on, Kevin Mannis's mother actually did go on Paranormal Witness and shared her experience with the Dybbuk Box. She said that as she opened the wine cabinet's doors, she felt a cold breeze and pure evil coming from the box. She then immediately had her stroke. In 2011, someone did go on to buy this box, and they gave it to their roommate, Jason Haxton, who's the next important person in our story today. He would actually go on to release a book detailing his experience with the Dybbuk Box, and it included random choking fits, bleeding from his eyes, and the same reoccurring nightmare with the old hag. And that was all within the first couple months. The next year is when the most prominent of the 3 movies came out that were centered around the Dybbuk Box. It was titled The Possession, and both Kevin Mannis and Jason Haxton were co-writers on this. And you have to remember, the Dybbuk Box was insanely popular at this time. Kevin Mannis's listing prompted a lot of other Dybbuk boxes to show up, and different listings on eBay. You could probably find one on Amazon. They were very popular, which is crazy to me. Maybe not Amazon. Could you imagine ordering a demon off Amazon? Like, I guess they have everything, right? Now, around the time of the release date for this movie, Entertainment Weekly actually released an article where the director, Old Borndale, he detailed some of the many strange and weird things that happened during production. Some examples include a time where he was standing underneath an unlit, unpowered neon sign, and unexpectedly and seemingly randomly, the sign just exploded above him. Thankfully, he wasn't hurt, and then just 5 days after filming the movie, all the props were destroyed in a mysterious fire. And like I said earlier, the internet was already going crazy with these Dybbuk boxes. You could find them everywhere. There were a bunch. But there was certainly a noticeable shift in the attention Dybbuk boxes got when none other than paranormal investigator Zach Bagans bought the Dybbuk Box off of Jason Haxton. And to this day, the Dybbuk Box actually resides with Zach Bagans in his haunted museum in Las Vegas and has the infamous title of the most haunted object in the world. And this tale doesn't just include the one celebrity of Zach Bagans, it includes another. I'll let you guess. Think about it. Time's up. Did you guess? Post Malone.
Beyonce.
Yeah, I really didn't see that one coming. I wasn't expecting Posty to get involved. During an investigation with Post Malone, Zach Bagans decided to open the box in front of him. And while he opened the box, Post Malone was seen on footage touching Zach Bagans. So I guess he didn't touch the box directly, but indirectly he did while touching Zach Bagans while Zach Bagans was touching the box. We have like a game of telephone going on here. And a lot of people believe that this alone was enough for the dark energy to get attached to Post Malone. Over the next several months, Post Malone experienced horrific bad luck. It made the news. Like, it was crazy.
You are a fan of rapper Post Malone. You know, he has not had the best luck lately. And now some believe it's because of something that he did during one of his trips to Las Vegas.
And this bad luck had a wide range. It involved his plane having to do a emergency landing, his home got broken into, thankfully, while he wasn't there, and he was also involved with a car accident. Scary stuff, right? Well, what if I told you it might actually not be? Now, don't get me wrong, we're getting creepy over here, but we're also being a little bit realistic, and that always comes with some good, healthy skepticism. In 2019, the Skeptical Inquirer actually released an article saying the whole thing was a hoax, but it had proof. The proof was actually a Facebook post made by none other than Kevin Mannis, dated October 24th, 2015. Let's read it. I am the original creator of the story of the Dybbuk Box, which appeared as one of my eBay posts back in 2003. The idea that Dybbuk boxes have some kind of history prior to my story, and the idea that a Dybbuk box could contain anything other than a Dybbuk, along with any deviation to the type of contents I created to be found inside of a Dybbuk box, is laughable at best. How about this? If you or anyone else can find any reference to a Dybbuk box anywhere in history prior to my eBay post, I'll pay you $100,000 and tattoo your name on my forehead. That's crazy. So this article really takes Mannis's Facebook post and kind of points out how Mannis made this whole story up. which is really crazy considering that he did benefit from the story going viral. And that's kind of why we're on shaky water here. Now, this article also did catch the eye of Charles Moss, who happened to be a copywriter for Input magazine. And after doing some sleuthing around, he came to the conclusion that Reddit will have answers. I have also come to that conclusion many times. Reddit always has answers. He got a few responses to his questions about Dybbuk boxes, but nothing caught his eye like a reply from someone called Manistar. Manistar is believed to be Kevin himself, and the reply read as follows. There were only 10 authentic and original Dybbuk boxes created ever. The term Dybbuk box was never used or known prior to 2001. I was the original owner. You may contact me and ask any questions you might have. Answers about Dybbuk boxes, my experience with them, or anything related from anyone else are probably a bunch of Now, this really piques Charles' interest because Kevin himself is talking to him. So while he replies back to the Reddit user and doesn't get a response, he is able to get in touch with Kevin via Facebook. He actually goes so far as to have several phone conversations with Kevin Manis himself. So during the first phone call that Charles actually had with Kevin kind of himself points out the hypocrisy that is a Dybbuk box. If you remember at the beginning of the video, I explained what a Dybbuk was, and it is a humanoid soul that possesses another person's body to find safe haven. So the idea that a Dybbuk could be trapped in a box just kind of goes against the mythology there. And although obviously nobody can prove or disprove if that is possible, nobody can also prove or disprove that the Loch Ness Monster isn't in my backyard pond. You know what I mean? But nonetheless, we shall continue. So that definitely is kind of like a point that goes against the legitimacy of the Dybbuk box, but that's not all. Charles, upon hearing Kevin Manis actually laugh about the hypocrisy of a Dybbuk box, questions him further on the legitimacy of his listing, but Kevin evades answering him. It's during the second phone call with Kevin Manis that the truth kind of emerges. Kevin goes on to reveal that everything, aside from his mother having a stroke upon receiving the box, is entirely a work of fiction. And when we look into Kevin's background of being a creative writer and also working in advertising, that really kind of makes sense. I myself went to school for advertising and marketing, and learning how to pivot and catch attention like that on the internet is definitely a very important of the job, so it's something that he likely knew was going to work. His intention the entire time was to create an interactive horror story in real time, which is what he accomplished. And I will say that is an amazing feat for a creative writer. Now with this next part, I'm going to be honest, I question his morals a little bit here, because he goes on to say that he never even got the box from a Holocaust survivor. Which, why'd you have to bring the Holocaust into it? You know, you could have just said it was from a grandmother, right? Like, was that really necessary? I don't know. He goes on to even say that he himself carved the prayer into the back of the wine cabinet. Since he is Jewish, this does check. And he did explicitly lie about that in his listing as well. He said he had no idea what it was. Charles then brought up how his mother was actually interviewed for Paranormal Witness about her experience, and he basically said that his mom was a good actress, which now Charles seems to go back and forth trying to gather information about this via Kevin Manis and Jason Haxton. Kevin claims that he did this entirely alone, and Jason claims that he has no knowledge of Manis's lies, basically. But to be completely fair, I don't think Jason would own up to that, considering the amount of money he made off of the sale of the box, the book, and the 3 movies made off of it. Manis also admits that over time, he invented new elements of the story just to keep it trending and relevant, interesting. And when the editor, Charles Moss, spoke to Haxton over the phone, he had some few choice words to say about Manis. He claimed that Manis was making this up because he was peeved at him for kind of shining in the spotlight. He claimed Manis was always peeved at him for taking the story where it truly belonged and kind of being in the spotlight of it. Direct quote, he said Manis was background noise. However, Manis denies ever being upset about that. It's starting to sound like a crazy he said, she said kind of moment. Even after Charles Moss explained to Haxton that he knows Manis made it up, Manis came clean to him, Jason says that everything he's experienced is still true. Now, this began to spark some more curiosity with Charles Moss, who is a little detective over here, okay? He decides, let's see what the current owner has to think about that. Zach Bagans. Now, Zach Bagans had originally declined an interview by Charles Moss, but once he got word that Moss kind of knew the true intentions behind it, it apparently started a flurry of emails back and forth between all the parties. And Charles became privy to this because Kevin kind of let him in. Kevin goes on to say that this really isn't looking good and starts to explain some more bad luck that he's experiencing, and he thinks it's due to the box, which, I'm going to be so honest, seems a little counterproductive now, but okay, sure. And eventually Zach Bagans did chime in and send an email directly to Charles Moss. I shall read that. Since owning the Dybbuk Box, there have been countless documented experiences people have had with it. Not just for myself, but my museum staff, my fellow crew members, visitors, and most notably, Post Malone. In regards to Manis saying that he made up the whole story, Zach says, I don't believe that to be the full truth. I think there's so much more to the Dybbuk Box, and regardless of its origins, it is very much cursed and evil. I'm not surprised that more controversy and conflict keep arising from it. The Dybbuk Box has always raised questions and intrigue, and this adds to its narrative. And that, my friends, is the tale of the Dybbuk Box. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Haunted heirloom or horror hoax? Personally, I think it's a little bit of a hoax, but you know what they say when a lot of people believe in something? It could be the work of a tulpa. You never know. Tulpas themselves are actually pretty interesting creatures, so let me know if you want me to do an episode on that. If this story gave you some chills or even made you raise an eyebrow, hit that like button and subscribe because I've got tons of more stories coming your way. A little bit of true crime, a little bit of paranormal, a little bit of conspiracy. I got something for everybody, okay? The craft I made in today's video should be on your screen right now. I'm currently out of masking tape, so I'm gonna have to run out and get some before I finish. But there is the finished product. I'm sure I love it. I'm sure it's so cute, and I can't wait to put it on my wall next to Freddy. Until next time, stay spooky, stay creative, and maybe don't open any old wine cabinets for now, okay? Bye!